Today I want to go over the 14.18 patch preview that just released. This is the quote-unquote Worlds patch, so it's going to be really focused on competitive play. But the thing I want to mainly focus on here is that it's going to be really easy to overreact to a lot of these changes. You really have to, when Riot put out these patch notes, you really have to imagine how they're going to play out in the game and what kind of differences they're going to be making. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the time, the changes made aren't really enough to kind of nerf the champion or buff the champion enough to the point where they're unplayable or playable. So I think that Riot has a lot of misdirection with a lot of these changes, not just in this patch, but in most patches, to be honest. And a lot of these changes are going to be really easy to overreact to. But let's just go through them real quick to see if they're going to be really any difference. So Ahri E damage is up. It's nice. I don't know why Ahri really fell off. It's just because of the marksman meta in mid lane. She's still a strong champion. She has been really this entire time, so maybe that can bring her back a little bit. She also does pretty well into a lot of marksmen, I feel like. But anyways, she's going to be still a pretty strong champion. Gnar plus 3 AD. It's not really going to do anything for him. Maybe it can help him trade in lane a little bit, but the reason that Gnar is bad is because his main strength as a champion is his Mega Gnar form and specifically his ult. And that is so easy to play around as the enemy team that you often see, or most of the time see the Gnar not really get any value out of that. If a Gnar wanted to play hard AD Gnar and go for more of a 1v1 split push style, maybe this could make a difference, but a lack of AD isn't the reason Gnar is bad. It's for other reasons, so I don't really see this making a whole lot of difference. Hwei support nerf on his WW shield strength is a little bit up, so maybe we'll see some Hwei support, but that's not really anything big. Jarvan passive damage up from 7% to 8%. Again, this is just a really misdirected buff. Jarvan's passive damage isn't the reason he's not being picked. He's not being picked because the jungle meta is full of AP scaling junglers who can farm really fast. Jarvan doesn't farm as fast as those, and he doesn't scale well. So his passive damage, while it's nice for skirmishing, I guess, again, this isn't the reason that Jarvan's not being played, in pro at least, so this buff doesn't really do anything for him. Jace melee Q slow is up, and ranged E haste is up. Again, same thing. These things aren't the reason Jace isn't being played. He's just not that great of a champion right now. I think he just needs to do more damage or have a stronger early lane phase. These changes are, I guess nice, but they're not really going to make Jace playable. Jinx attack speed growth up from 1 to 1.4. This could actually be pretty significant. I definitely think we could be seeing Jinx in Worlds pretty consistently because of this. And that's actually pretty exciting because it'll change up the bot lane meta a little bit to more maybe hyperscaling enchanter focused bot lanes instead of the brainless, engaged support meta that we've been seeing. So maybe if Jinx becomes strong, things like Lulu, Karma, Soraka could become strong as well. Will pro players actually pick those champions? Probably not, but I definitely think we could be seeing some Jinx at Worlds. Lulu passive damage per bolt is up early and a little bit late, so that could give Lulu a little more trading power in the early lane phase. Again, with Jinx buff and Lulu buff, maybe that could be a thing at Worlds, but we'll have to see there. I've been a huge fan of enchanters forever, but no one plays them, so Malphite passive shield is up by 1% max HP. It doesn't really do anything. I mean, Malphite's still a really good champion, and especially in the marksman meta now that we see so consistently, I don't know why Malphite hasn't been played more. So honestly, this shield is making him even stronger, even though it's not a big buff and doesn't make a whole lot of difference. The champ is still really good, and in the current meta, should be being played consistently, but he's just not. Samira Q damage is just up. The AD scaling on it is up, so that helps out Samira. I don't think that Samira is super playable in pro because she's so coin flippy, and ADCs typically don't want to be diving into fights. But if you commit a comp around her, like to play for her with things like Nautilus, Amumu, AoE lockdown for Samira, she can be very successful. But again, teams don't really know how to draft, so I don't see Samira really being played. Shen passive shield is up a little bit. Not really going to do anything. Shen's not a great champion right now. This one's interesting. Viego base AD is up and Q bonus monster damage is down by 5. People could look at this Q damage nerf and be like, oh, what? Why are they nerfing Viego Q damage? Well, his Q doesn't really actually do any damage to monsters to begin with. It does a little bit, but its main thing is to proc your passive auto. So the Q damage nerf isn't really going to do anything, but the plus 3 AD is actually going to help his early killer pretty significantly, I think, because he auto attacks way more than he Qs. So I think that Viego could actually see some meta shifts in Worlds as well. Xin Zhao armor growth is up by 0.3, and his Q bonus damage per hit is up late game, and max bonus damage is also up. So typically, this is weird because typically Xin Zhao's max W into E. Maybe this shifts them into maxing Q second, but since Q is maxed last typically for Xin Zhao, these changes aren't really going to come into effect because junglers often don't hit level 18 in pro games. So I don't really know what this change is about. Maybe Xin Zhao players can start maxing Q second. Maybe that could be a thing. Maybe he could see some games at Worlds, but as long as the AP junglers are still in existence, I don't really see Xin doing much. Aurora got absolutely destroyed. Her R jump distance, her R wall forgiveness, and her R duration all got nerfed. So they're still trying to whittle down this champion, even though she's been absolutely broken since release. And all of her nerfs have been, kind of unsuccessful thus far. Maybe this will take her out of being so OP. Azir R damage is down pretty significantly actually in base damage and AP scaling. This is one of those changes I was talking about at the beginning that could be really easy to overreact to. I think that, on the surface it's like, oh wow, that's a lot of damage. He's much weaker. But I think you have to think about the purpose of Azir's ultimate. And I think that the primary reason that Azir's ult is strong is the repositioning effect, not the damage. The damage is nice, but it's mainly the reposition that makes his ultimate strong. So while this is a pretty significant damage nerf, I think Azir is still a perfectly fine and perfectly pickable mid laner. He's still going to scale insanely well, and his ult damage isn't the main reason that you're picking him, and it's not the main reason even that his ultimate's a strong ability. Corki Q damage is down by 20 at rank 5. I don't think this is really going to do anything. He's still going to be, perfectly fine in lane. He can survive any lane. If they really wanted to take out Corki from the meta and really nerf him, they would have to nerf every single one of his scaling ratios and probably his health and armor scaling as well. The champ is just too broken right now, and minus 20 damage on his Q isn't going to do anything. Ivern E shield is down by 10 and E slow is down by 5%. Again, it's not really going to do anything. Ivern's still super broken. And his E shield ratio is still too high. It's not really the base shield that's the problem, it's the shield ratio that makes it so strong. Since his items are so cheap, he can get a lot of shield power really early, and that makes him look really OP. So I don't think this change is going to do much. Ivern is still, a first pickable champion on blue side in my opinion. It's really OP. Leona armor down by 4. This could do something, but Leona's still definitely the best engaged support out there, and in combination with her W armor and Aftershock, I don't really think this is going to do a whole lot. Maybe in the level 1 this could do something, but bot lanes aren't typically fighting very much level 1, so I think that Leona's still a perfectly fine pick. Lilia, this is actually a pretty big one in my opinion. Passive monster damage cap is just a flat 65 now, and her R sleep duration is also down. But the big one here is the damage cap against monsters for her passive. This could actually cause a pretty significant time decrease for her early clears. Until she gets points in Q and a couple items, maybe like Liandry's, her clear could be significantly slower. That passive damage against monsters is really something that contributed to her quick clear. So they really gutted it, especially later. So I think that this could potentially drop Lilia off a couple tiers in jungle. Lissandra QAP ratio down 10%. It doesn't really do anything. Maokai E cooldown is up. E brush duration is down. Down bonus HP ratio. So again, not really going to do anything. Maokai isn't OP because of his saplings, and adding 2 seconds to the cooldown isn't going to make him not OP. He's OP because of his ultimate and his targeted CC, his clear speed, everything about him. So this is not going to do anything. Maokai's still really good. Misfortune down 2 flat AD. Again, not really going to do a whole lot. I think the champion's still really good, although there are a couple indirect nerfs that I will talk about later that could see MF drop off a couple tiers. Here's another change that could be really overreacted to is Nasus. His E initial damage is down, his DPS is down, and his E max damage is down as well. So this is primarily nerfing mid lane Nasus that just wanted to clear waves with E and kind of stack up slowly. But really, the primary way or the correct way you play Nasus is just farming with Q. So when you think about it that way, it's not really going to do anything. And in the late game team fights, Nasus, his strength isn't his E damage. His E is there for the armor shred, and his primary damage is from his Q stacking. So I don't think that this is really going to take Nasus out of the meta. Maybe it could take him out of mid lane, but in top lane, he's still perfectly fine because the primary reason you're picking Nasus is to stack and to scale and be good in team fights. Although the wave clear on his E was nice if you want to max it and put 3 points into it, this will hurt his wave clear a little bit in mid lane, but he's still perfectly fine in my opinion. It's really going to be easy to overreact to that change and be like, oh, they ruined Nasus. That's just not the case. He's still perfectly fine. Rel initial E move speed is down, and max E move speed is also down. It's fine. I mean, Rel I don't think is a great champion to begin with, and her engage stays the same, so she's still probably going to be picked. I don't think she's that great of a champion, but pro players do, so she's probably going to be fine. Rumble, this is, I think, could be pretty significant. Q damage is down early, and E damage is down early, so I think that that could help some tanks or melee champions survive against Rumble in the early lane phase. He still scales really well, and he's going to be a beast in team fights, obviously, but just taking out some of his early lane power I think could help balance him out a little bit, so that's actually a decent change. Smolder Q damage is down. They take out the AP ratio, and the W glob damage as well. The W damage doesn't really do anything. I don't know why that was really needed. It's also a 5 damage nerf, so that's just needless. But the Q damage is a good nerf, taking out the AP ratio as well, so he's more linear in terms of itemization is good, I think. So hopefully this helps contain Smolder a little bit. I think he's still a pickable champion, especially in solo lanes, so we'll see how that changes at Worlds. Varus Q AD ratio is down 20%, and AD ratio is down 10%. I don't think this is a big deal because people aren't playing Lethality Varus. On-hit Varus has been stronger for a long time, and I think Riot is just encouraging people to play on-hit Varus or even AP Varus. If you're playing Lethality Varus in this meta, please just stop. So Varus, I think, is actually a super strong ADC if you just build him on-hit, or you could even play AP mid lane or top lane. Vi Q damage is just down a little bit. Doesn't really do anything. Champ is just still not that good. And maybe this impacts her early skirmishing a little bit, but doesn't really change a whole lot. Zeri passive damage is actually, I'm not going to bother reading all that, but her passive scaling is now linear and it's just flat out nerfed. So her passive is just going to be doing less damage throughout the entire game. Ziggs, this is something I actually just watched Casual react to this, what I'm doing now. And he read this Ziggs change and he said Ziggs is completely effed because of it. That's just completely wrong. I mean, it's his passive auto against structures. While it does do a lot of damage in the late game, it's not the reason that Ziggs is strong. Obviously, it's definitely a nerf. He's going to kill towers a little slower. But his W satchel against towers is still intact. His wave clear is still intact. His scaling damage is still intact. The strength as a champion is not from his passive auto against structures. So this really doesn't change anything. Ziggs is still a really insane champion. System adjustments, these 3 AP items got small changes, like plus AP, plus magic pen. Not really going to be doing anything. Some interesting things about turret fortification. Not really a whole lot changing, but just some damage resists being changed. And then turret fortification, damage reduction for first 5 minutes is up 10%. Again, it's not really going to do anything because it doesn't exist in bot lane, and top laners and mid laners aren't really hitting their turrets in the first 5 minutes anyways. Maybe this could just be to discourage lane swapping, which could definitely be the case. I'm honestly down for that. Fleet footwork, getting some changes to different types of heals. I think it's still a fine rune to take in competitive play, especially in Precision Tree. It's mainly for lane sustain for marksman, so I think this could just move them over to taking press the attack. Bloodthirster, this is the indirect nerf to Misfortune I was talking about. Bloodthirster just getting less lifesteal, less shield, early game, significantly less shield actually. So I think this is just kind of a nerf to Misfortune in combination with the 2 AD nerf. Since MF really often liked to rush Bloodthirster first item, this could be a small nerf to her in like the first maybe like 10 to 20 minute range before she gets her second and third items. So maybe she should use a drop off. Still think she's playable if she just wants to rush something like Collector instead. And then Shield Bow kind of got crapped on, and I think this is unfortunate because no one really builds it in Pro, and Riot's again ignoring solo queue. So basically, it's going to be another solo queue nerf for ADCs. Already the weakest role, they're going to be even weaker. And in pro play, no one actually builds this item, so I don't think it really does anything. So overall, this patch is like kind of meh. I don't think a lot of these changes are actually that meaningful. Again, don't overreact to changes that don't actually do anything. You actually have to think about how these are going to play out in the game, and whether or not these changes are what's making this champion strong to begin with. The one that really made me laugh was the Ziggs nerf. It doesn't really impact the champion a whole lot. It doesn't take Ziggs out of the meta. It doesn't make him any less weak. Still an insanely strong champion. So let me know what you guys think about this 14-18 patch preview for the Worlds patch. Thanks for watching. See you next time.